Professor Zhu. It's truly a great pleasure to meet you this time because a few years ago, back in time, I saw the sentence we just discussed, just between the two of us. When scientists painstakingly and carefully climb to the top of the mountain, they find that the Buddhist masters have been waiting there for a long time. This sentence, whether in academic circles or in today's contemporary cultural circles, has had a tremendous impact, a significant impact. So I want to sincerely ask, as a dedicated scientific worker and also someone who has served as a university president for many years, under what kind of background did you actually say this sentence? So that's really just my very first question for you.
10 years earlier, I had already been studying Buddhism with Master Nanhuai Chin. I studied the Shurangama Sutra and the Lankavatara Sutra, as well as the Yogacara Bhumi Sastra and the Cheng Wei Shi Lun. After thoroughly studying these ancient and sacred Buddhist scriptures, I discovered that many concepts in modern physics are actually becoming increasingly close to the ideas discussed in the Buddhist scriptures. This inspired me to vow to write an article called the book Physics Entering the Realm of Zen, a fascinating exploration, the most significant and profound things in the field of modern science in a more accessible way so that everyone could understand. Then people realize where modern science is going is becoming more and more aligned with some of the key concepts found in Buddhist scriptures. For example, about matter. In the past, we all thought the material world was made up of bricks, that everything was solid and tangible. The bricks got smaller and smaller to atoms and molecules, but no matter what, they were still just tiny bricks stacked together. However, modern physics has discovered that if you break these bricks down even further, they disappear. They turn into things that have no solid form at all. So what are these things like? They're like gentle waves on the surface of water, or like the gentle resonant vibrations on a musical string.
Right, you know, the so-called waves.
Yes, like waves on a string or water
Right.
waves. They're not actually solid objects at all. Instead, they're made up of vibrating. The greater the energy, the greater the mass of the particle. Simply, the less the energy, the smaller the mass. In this way, the material world we see actually transforms into a truly grand and magnificent symphony. Or, to use the words from the ancient Buddhist scriptures as they are described, it's like the waves on the ocean. It's not the ocean itself, but the waves of the ocean.
Waves, ocean, ocean waves. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form.
Physics has reached this point where it actually very clearly expresses what Buddhism describes as the true fundamental nature of the universe, as it truly is. So when I was actually writing this article, I included my understanding of the history of scientific development, how the concept of matter has changed from being a solid entity at first to later not being a solid entity, but in essence a kind of wave. And its vibration and energy, it's something that exists devoid of time or space. At that moment, I felt emotion when I finished writing. When scientists climbed to the top of the mountain, the Buddhist masters have already been waiting there for a long time. What does this sentence mean? Buddhism, like science, is about understanding the truth of the universe. But Buddhism uses a different method. Unlike science, which conducts experiments, it relies on meditation. After meditation, an individual's wisdom gradually and noticeably increases over time. They can see things ordinary people can't, even if they try. They understand it all at once. It's like when we look at a child, they find many things in the world strange and incomprehensible. But when they grow up and mature, they understand everything at a glance. Just like when we look at everything in the world, it's actually quite different from what an animal sees in its own unique way. Animals just don't understand, right? But humans can instantly comprehend it all. This is what happens when wisdom increases. Naturally, you come to understand things that others can't comprehend. This is a method in Buddhism. The scientific method is different. The scientific method requires doing experiments. Experiments are done one by one, testing each time to discover the truth. That's why scientists work so hard. They have to do experiments.
They use various instruments, make many judgments, analyses, and so on.
They
Yes.
reason through these things and then conduct experiments. Science seeks to understand the universe.
Right.
But it took 2,000 years for science to gradually evolve to where it is today. Modern science agrees with what Buddhist masters realized 2,000 years ago. Their understanding of the fundamental nature of the universe, the essence of the cosmos, is the same. This is a dependent origination and the emptiness. In other words, the entire material world is actually an illusion. It is a manifestation of the true essence, something more fundamental. When I say this, I'm actually referring to an article I wrote. At the end of writing, I was filled with emotion, and I wanted to express that feeling as accurately as possible. So I ended up saying these words.
I really think so too. This is something I've been thinking about all along. Maybe this is also your own summary, your so-called realization, or perhaps a kind of wisdom, a very, very profound kind. Even though there aren't many words, there truly is a certain power within them. I always feel that way. So I was actually wondering, under what specific circumstances you were able to say crafted words. And indeed, you spoke from a truly fair, balanced, and very reasonable standpoint, one that is both thoughtful and well considered. Expressing such deep and genuine admiration.
I come from a background in the natural sciences. I've spent decades in research, so I'm very familiar with scientific methods. Later, after studying Buddhism, I also began to understand the methods of Buddhist study. I think scientific methods have been successful over the years. Just like our current material world, our wealth was created using scientific, but scientific methods have their limitations. There are many things they still can't achieve. For example, when doing experiments means that no matter who you are, as long as you're under the same conditions, under identical conditions, you will get the same results. This is called repeatability. And that's what an experiment is. But Buddhism is just the opposite. Buddhism often talks in detail about, as it says, for example, in the ancient Shurangama Sutra, this is what's called discovering according to karma, that is, recognizing and following your own karma, meaning the unique path and circumstances that arise from your past actions and choices. By carefully and consciously following your own unique karma, only then can you truly discover certain important things in life. It's not that everyone can discover the same things because of differences in karma between people. What each person perceives will be different. This Buddhist principle is exactly the opposite of science. Scientists have been unable to understand Buddhism. They think it's superstition, nonsense, and unreliable to them. They just don't understand. The Buddhist idea of discovering according to karma is, in fact, actually correct. That's why I truly believe in these important principles of Buddhism, which I have come to understand and appreciate. Buddhism can complement science. The two are not contradictory. Both aim to find universal truth and complement one another. Buddhism shouldn't look down on science either. And science shouldn't look down on Buddhism. From Buddhism's view, all worldly law are Buddhist teachings. Therefore, science is also Buddha Dharma.
Einstein also said that any religion, if it goes hand in hand with science, then that is in fact Buddhism.
You know this quote, he really did say that if any religion can be consistent with science, then that is Buddhism. But Einstein hadn't seen the recent developments in science.
I've been thinking the same thing.
If he sees it afterwards, he will speak more accurately.
He didn't witness the latest scientific advancements, especially the later developments in quantum mechanics. And in addition, his understanding of Buddhism, because in his era, Buddhist texts hadn't been translated to English. So he may have some deeper and more nuanced understanding of Buddhism. He might not know about them.
English translations aren't good enough.
Right.
I know English, and I've read those Buddhist scriptures translated into English.
I saw that your English was very good. You were actually among the first to go to the United States.
Some terms just can't be translated.
A lot of English translations, like the word Buddha, they simply transliterate the Sanskrit sound directly without altering it.
In fact, it's impossible to translate the most profound aspects of Buddhist philosophy. I have seen the English translation of the Vijñaptimattara Siddhi, Chengguai Shilun. It was translated by a very famous translator. But when you read the translated version, the meaning has already in some way changed. It's like desperately scratching an itch through your shoe. You just can't quite reach it, no matter how hard you try. There's a huge cultural barrier. So I believe that, honestly, Einstein didn't know Chinese or Sanskrit. They don't really understand the true meaning behind these scriptures. Actually, for example, the word emptiness is very difficult to translate into English. Translation, nothing at all.
Yes, nothing at all. But phrases like form is emptiness, emptiness as form are extremely profound. This kind of state, which is beyond all words, simply can't be expressed. It's as if nothing exists at all.
So to truly study Buddhism, you can't just simply read books. You need to go beyond that. You have to actually experience it yourself, to really practice it on your own. Only after you have direct experience can you truly understand what it means.
There's another thing, because I actually saw that in the past, at the very beginning, it seemed like you were in Tibet, as if the surroundings and the atmosphere immediately brought. I had seen some interviews before, and I watched one a while ago. You went there, and in that special environment, and you studied physics, chemistry, and English, and afterwards went to the United States. Afterwards, you also indeed became the president of the University of Science and Technology of China. From our perspective, it appears that this kind of research, especially since you are a renowned chemist, in this case your research on Buddhism, for example, or whether it's Buddhist practice or realization in particular, when did you first get involved in this area? With what kind of mindset?
Many people see Buddhism as superstition.
But as a scientist, you definitely really wouldn't be like others, worship Buddha, following the crowd or following the flow. I believe that wouldn't be the case for you. So with what kind of mindset do you, in your opinion, approach this research? From an academic perspective, it's research, while from a Buddhist perspective, it's study and practice. So with what kind of mindset did you start to accept Buddhism?
As I mentioned earlier, ever since I was a child, I have always had a deep natural love and affection for Buddhism and temples, but there was no particular reason. I couldn't explain this fondness in my heart. It wasn't until I was over 50 in my life, when I was serving as president of USTC. At that time, I started coming across some interesting articles and saw that internationally, some people had begun to study cognitive science. Most current scientific research focuses on the material world, and science either doesn't dare to study or often tends to avoid researching the subject of human consciousness. So how should consciousness be studied? This might potentially be a major direction for the 21st century. So at the beginning, I was coming as a scientific development, wanting to see how consciousness should be studied. At that point, it was inevitable to think about, let's take a closer look at the specific ways in which Buddhism approaches and examines the nature of consciousness. I've been to Tibet several times, all out of kind of longing, hoping to learn from renowned Tibetan Buddhist lamas, eminent monks, and tulkus how they view consciousness and what they are able to achieve through training their consciousness. For example, when I went to Jaikundo town in Yushu Prefecture, there was a temple there. There's a Jaikundo monastery. At the Jaikundo monastery, skilled Tumo inner heat meditation practice. Each Lantern Festival, after the Spring Festival, there is a day when all the monks in the monastery sit together by the lake. Then they soak blankets in the icy water and drape them over themselves. And they meditate until the frozen blankets are dried by their body heat.
Yes, that's definitely something you see in Tibetan.
Although I haven't seen it personally with my own eyes, as it's on the 15th day of the first lunar month, and I wasn't there. When I went, it's already summer, but many people have witnessed. I believe this is truly achievable without a doubt. This shows that there are aspects of consciousness we are far from understanding, and science has yet to comprehend. It relies on the training of the mind to generate heat throughout the body until the frozen blankets are dried. This is something that has had a profound impact on me. I feel that the study of consciousness training, as it is practiced and understood in Tibetan Buddhism, has already reached a very advanced level, to the point where one can cultivate inner heat like Tumo. I truly and deeply believe that Tibetan Buddhism, with all my heart, has indeed accumulated a wealth of knowledge about the cultivation of consciousness. For example, at Diegu Monastery in Jaikundo town, their practice of Tumo. You also practice Tamo, right? Yes, I do practice Tamo.
Master Nanhuai Chin said when he was reading the Tripitaka at Mount May, he also found several references to this practice in the Tripitaka, specifically Tumo meditation.
This kind of thing is truly worth serious study. That's why I have always felt a deep sense of reverence for Tibetan Buddhism and want to really understand it thoroughly. Of course, I think there are really quite a great many aspects of Buddhism that you really have to experience and practice yourself in order to understand. It's not something you can grasp at all just by hearing about it or reading books. The opportunities I've had are quite limited, so my understanding isn't deep. Now I feel that the path of practice I can take in my own life, each and every day, is clear understanding of science. And I think this clearly explain the important and foundational principles that demonstrate and clarify the connections between science and Buddhism.
Right.
I think among the 84,000 Dharma doors in Buddhist cultivation, this is a scientific approach.
Yes.
Maybe for people just like us, following this Dharma door is just like those who practice Tibetan Buddhism. We all ultimately reach the final truth, right? Yes. Now I focus my energy on, we need to clarify scientific issues. The biggest taboo in science is often considered to be to force comparisons. Doing that just makes people unconvinced. So you really have to understand it fully first and then explain its meaning very accurately. Only then will people accept it.
I remember that you actually brought this up before at some point in a conversation, if I'm not mistaken, that science can be divided into three areas: natural sciences, mind sciences, and human sciences. These three areas each correspond to their own distinct aspects, with each area being directly related. Indian civilization, Chinese civilization, and Greek civilization. I think this method of analysis is indeed very good. There was the saying of the four ancient civilizations. That's one way to see it. But now, if we simply divide it in this way, I feel that there is truly a deeper sense of synthesis in it that I can perceive. But among them, as you pointed out, what you just mentioned is specifically mind science. For example, the Western psychologist Zhang, after he was introduced to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, he considered it to be very scientific indeed. Throughout the entirety of his life, he never let go of this book known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It was a constant companion to him, something he kept close at hand from his earliest days. In many places in Taiwan, it's often referred to as mind science or cognitive science. So this cognitive science, the alaya vijnana consciousness and the analysis of consciousness that we discuss in Buddhism, do you honestly think from this particular perspective that this is the case? Is there a gap in natural sciences and social sciences? There hasn't been any in-depth research. Is that what you mean?
Science has a fundamental assumption, which is the principle of repeatability, or it's unrelated to consciousness. That's what we call objectivity. Science always studies objective laws. So-called objectivity means excluding anything subjective. That's why science keeps its distance and doesn't dare to get involved with anything subjective. But in fact, the subjective and the objective cannot be separated. Many objective things may actually be influenced by the subject. How does the subjective influence the objective? Before quantum mechanics, no one really ever thought about this. Not even once. Everyone believed the objective was simply objective. Our science only studies objective laws, right? Objective laws, objective phenomena. Once you become subjective, then you make mistakes. But quantum mechanics discovered that apart from objective laws in any system, subjectivity is without a doubt absolutely essential. Particles in quantum mechanics, they can appear in all sorts of places. It could be in many different states. Which state is it actually in? You have to use subjective factors to measure it. Then, quite suddenly, it immediately appears in a very particular state. There's a famous experiment called Schrodinger's cat. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yes, I've heard of Schrodinger's cat.
Schrodinger's cat is about the famous thought experiment. A cat is placed inside a small box. Next to the cat, there's a vial of poison. Above the small glass vial, there's a large, heavy hammer. If the hammer falls, it breaks the vial. Once the vial is destroyed, in this scenario, the cat inside the box is killed. So what actually controls the hammer? It's controlled by a radioactive atomic nucleus. The atomic nucleus has a 50% chance of emitting radiation or a 50% chance of not emitting it. So the cat has a 50% chance of already being dead, 50% chance of not dying. How do you decide, or how do you know whether the cat is dead or not? You only really know if someone actually goes and takes a look, right? But for someone to look, it requires the observer's subjective consciousness to come into play. If no one looks at it, then the cat remains in a state of being both half dead and half alive. This is a very well-known and a significant problem in quantum mechanics. One that, after much debate, people realize that if quantum mechanics is to be truly real in the most fundamental sense, the objective must be thoughtfully combined with the subjective, because subjectivity is truly essential. This thing called consciousness can no longer be excluded from quantum mechanics. So I realized that at the level of quantum mechanics, the human mind and consciousness, with all their complexities and unique qualities, must always be taken into account in order for science to be truly complete and fully comprehensive. That's why my thoughts about consciousness actually started from quantum mechanics, a field of physics that explores the strange and fundamental behaviors of cognitive science, or the science of the mind, covers a lot more. For example, like two more that we mentioned, how can consciousness training change your physiological state to the point where you can generate enough heat to melt ice, to warm and dry wet blankets. This is the effect that consciousness can have. In addition, more than 10 years ago, someone in the United States conducted an experiment inviting dozens of high-ranking Tibetan Buddhist monks to meditate.
At Harvard University,
They closely monitored their brains. They also recruited more than 20 people with no meditation experience who had just started learning to meditate. Then they monitored their brains as well. They found when Tibetan Buddhists, their brains had already changed. Their brains were completely different from those of ordinary people. This kind of practice, like meditation, has actually already caused physiological changes. Your brain has already changed, it has transformed. This made me feel that, in particular, consciousness and the mind truly are things that are truly worth studying. Thus, from these perspectives, I have been continuously paying attention to consciousness, mind science, and cognitive science.
Yes. The existence of past and future lives in Buddhism, as it is commonly understood, has been studied by many people in the West through hypnosis. Some are able to recall their past and future lives. Of course, in places like Tibet, everyone accepts this, but nowadays many young people who have grown up in different environments, they all categorically refuse to acknowledge it. They feel as if it's just a saying that when a person dies, it's like a lamp going out. I believe that consciousness continues to exist as part of a constant cycle. How do you view this issue?
Reincarnation, you mean, right? This is actually a question that I personally really want to understand and figure out. With current level of scientific development, physics has discovered something similar to alaya vijnana consciousness. It has found that people, along with all things in the universe, are actually really manifestations of this thing. This thing stores all of our past, future, and present.
All the information is carefully stored right there in that very place.
So alaya vijnana is also called storehouse consciousness.
Yes, storehouse consciousness, also called foundational consciousness.
They discovered that this thing essentially contains all your personal and sensitive information.
It's just like a USB drive. Everything is stored all inside. That's why it's called a Tathagata Garbha, Buddha nature.
If this physical theory is eventually proven in the future by scientists as expected, then people being able to truly and fully know about their own past, their personal history in detail, and the idea of reincarnation would in fact have a scientific basis. At the present moment, things such as the concept of reincarnation, for example, are still limited to psychologists hypnotizing you several times to help you recall things. Some people recall various states from their previous lives, but most people, they don't really believe that. Because the things recalled under hypnosis, how do you know if they really happen? It could also just be an illusion created by the brain after hypnosis. So when it comes to reincarnation, only if modern natural science, through careful and systematic study, discovers the true and fundamental nature of the universe in all its complexity, if we use modern physics language, it's like the negative of a holographic photograph, which is an image that contains all the information in reverse, and this data is carefully stored within it. If one day people are able to directly access information from there, in that place, then you might be able to see everything from the past and the future, because it all exists right there in that place. On this point, I want to find some time, put in the effort to write this article well.
Yes, this is very important.
Yes, important. Once it's written, it will let everyone know, especially everyone involved, just how far modern science has come, especially in recent years. I don't know if this answered your question.
Very good, very good. Excellent indeed. On one hand, what you said is truly very precious and meaningful, and I honestly think that some of your words, the things you expressed. However, I also have a lot of questions. I hope that in the future, many people in various places over time will come to recognize some truths. They shouldn't be too confused or simply regard Buddhism as superstition. If it really were superstition, if it truly were unreasonable, we wouldn't want to, nor would we stubbornly cling to our own views. But in reality, many people, I've been studying this for almost 30 years now. Every day I'm learning as I go. I feel that both Buddhism and science have truly excellent aspects that complement each other. Just as you mentioned earlier, both can bring profound benefits to everyone. There's one more thing I'd like to ask Professor Zhu, if I may. Some time ago, I visited the School of Marxism at a university. They asked me to talk about Marx's views on religion. I visited the University of Göttingen in Germany. There, I met some professors while talking. They felt that Marx's early perspective on religion, it was not simply or merely that all religion was considered to be a kind of opium. At that time, opium was actually a very expensive commodity. It was a kind of comforting medicine that attracted people and relieved their suffering. Later on, it seems that Engels, since the Orthodox Church was then harmful to the October Revolution, added the idea of narcotics to it, and thus called it opium. Moreover, the concept of opium, including its cultural significance and historical context in the West and in China, is also quite different from each other. Nowadays, many young people think this view is unscientific. They think Marx's view unreasonable. Marx's view on religion, I've studied it. He didn't actually oppose it outright either in any clear way. It's just that he may have denied some traditions and constraints. As for his true religious views, he said humanity dialectics began Shakyamuni Buddha in this Kapital. So I think Marx's view on religion is not like young people believe, as if religion is nothing but superstition, something truly perhaps decadent, outdated, dogmatic, and rigid. I don't think that's really the case. From a scientific or religious view, or from a social or anthropological point of view, how should we regard this?
I think the core of Marxist philosophy is seeking truth from facts. He actually lived in the 19th century. Science was less developed than today. For example, materialism back then still regarded matter as a substance, but now science knows that matter is not a substance. On this point, if Marx were still alive today, he would have new and more advanced explanations. So I believe that as science develops, the important truths we come to understand about the universe. This kind of scientific worldview is essentially Marxism. So what I just talked about is all from a scientific worldview. As for Buddhism, I've said before that I don't treat it as a religion. I specifically study its knowledge, which is called Buddhist studies. Buddhism is also a way to understand the truth of the universe.
Yes, that's
right?
science.
Yes. It is also a science. Buddhism itself, in fact, does not advocate personal worship. Everyone can truly become a Buddha, you just need to let go. If you are no longer stubborn and deluded and you become enlightened, then you are Buddha. In this sense, it does not in any way promote personal worship, nor does it numb people, it doesn't dull their feelings. It encourages people to be kinder, to pursue goodness, and to be more self-sacrificing. These are all positive aspects. But we can't ignore the simple fact that today's Buddhism, a lot of it got messed up by Buddhists.
It's been tainted.
It's been tainted. Actually, Buddha Shakyamuni said this long ago, that when the age of the decline of the Dharma arrives, the ones who truly destroy Buddhism will be these very Buddhists. They deceive people, they collect money, and they do many bad things. As a result, many people today have developed a negative view of Buddhism. This is the age of Dharma decline, a situation that Shakyamuni Buddha for so long ago distinguished Buddhism from its studies.
Yes. I see that you and Nan Huaijin, you wrote something called Mr. Nan Huaijin in My Heart. So when it comes to traditional culture, you must have delved deeply and explained it. Well, how can we keep tradition alive? How can we ensure its continuation and spread? I don't know Han traditional culture. Our Tibetan traditional culture is indeed equally vital. So in today's society, we also can't abandon modern scientific knowledge, but we can't give up our culture. There are admirable moral virtues in it. So how should we approach this?
I believe that traditional culture is something we should always cherish. We should absorb its best and finest parts. The finest parts are those that contain universal truths. A controversial part of Chinese traditional culture is Chinese medicine. The theory of meridians in Chinese medicine, scientists searched throughout the human body for these meridians. But since they couldn't find them, they concluded that the theory of meridians is pseudoscience. When I practiced meditation and entering deep states of concentration, I personally experienced it myself. When I reached a certain level of stillness, I could feel a tingling sensation at the meridian locations. You can sense flow surging along the meridian pathways. So I realized China's meridian theory was actually discovered by these dedicated physicians who sensed them. After going deep into meditation, then they drew it out. There is no physical carrier for this. There isn't something like a blood vessel, a physical channel through which it flows. It is a type of QI, and this QI is not a material substance. Most people can't imagine what a non-material QI could be. But modern science has already told us that at the deepest level, the material world is not material. It is a source of both consciousness and matter. Alaya consciousness, Tathagata Garbha. Such things are neither born nor destroyed nor material. We can also describe it as a kind of dependent origination. This thing exists somewhere deep inside the body, and there is also this kind of thing flowing in certain locations. I believe in Chinese medicine, it has its reasoning. To give an example, treasures or important things in traditional culture, which are often regarded as symbols of heritage and valued for their deep meaning. First, someone has to truly understand them so as not to be blind about it, and then they can be discovered and brought to light. For instance, in the traditional Tibetan medicine system, there is something that is called Tibetan medicine has a practice of refining zuota, right?
Yes,
this is a traditional process, correct? Near Jiegu town, there is a temple in particular dedicated specifically to making zuota pellets. Zuota is made from mercury, from quicksilver. Mercury is extremely highly toxic. But the zuota in Tibetan medicine is actually very effective and works really well.
Especially for some poisoning, its efficacy is high.
Exactly. This is truly one of the unique and outstanding aspects of Tibetan traditional culture. After generations of experimentation, people have come to know that zuota is extremely effective. But the underlying principles are still not very well understood. Things like this really ought to be passed down. If lost, no one can make zuota, then it would be impossible for it to continue and be carried forward. So when I went to Tibet, I had a wish, and I was also very curious, want to understand how zuota is made. It takes long time, much effort, I only then realized that it's not something that can be made in just a few days. It's complex, takes effort, and is a secret not shared with outsiders.
In Tibet, there are two main things. One is medicine, and the other is astronomy. Astronomy is indeed even rarer. For example, there might be 3 or 4 lamas, and in about a month or two, they can produce the entire calendar for the next year. They don't need any scientific basis. They just simply start with a pen, and once they're done, could you please tell me specifically what is the date of the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse next year? They can calculate all the times completely and accurately. This is also based on Shakyamuni Buddha's Kalachakra Tantra teachings, and they don't need any modern instruments at all. Always has been. In our monastery, we also have our astronomy group, 5 or 6 people. They're young, post 1980s. They keep calculating. I asked how long it takes. They said it takes almost 2 months. They can calculate the calendar for next year. No other instruments are needed at all. This is extremely rare.
Such things are outstanding aspects of traditional culture. First of all, I think people should have a basic mindset. We should have reverence for traditional culture. Don't be too quick to dismiss things you haven't yet fully understood. This is a fundamental attitude. First, cherish them, learn about them, and then strive to truly understand them. Only in this way can we genuinely and truly inherit traditional culture. Take, for example, Zuota, which I know of a substance that I consider to be incredibly profound and deeply fascinating. It can cure illnesses and does so quite well. But mercury, on the other hand, is a heavy metal that is well known for being highly toxic to humans and the environment, making it extremely dangerous even in small amounts. I once tried to get some Zuota powder, took it back, did tests. Later I got busy and too little substance, couldn't do it. I really want to know what Zuota actually is.
Today, during my conversation with Principal Zhu, science and Buddhism, and another was about traditional culture. I think I am also just very interested. I have also done some work in these areas over the years. In the short span of life still ahead, I hope to do as much as I can since I have this interest. So I hope that Professor Zhu can engage with these young people, with people in today's world on Buddhism and science and write works like your previous article, Physics Entering the Realm of Zen, or other particularly valuable contributions in this field to leave for the world. This is important. When a person's writings are passed down for hundreds or even thousands of years, that is truly something to hope for. Professor Zhu, what are your hopes for the younger generation today? Buddhism science relationship, or any hopes for the inheritance of traditional culture? Could you perhaps share with us what hopes you have? Approach Buddhism and science impartially?
I think whether it's Buddhism or traditional culture, we should approach with the right attitude. First, don't immediately dismiss things you don't understand, labeling them as mere superstition or pseudoscience right away without further consideration. Instead, inherit them first and then make an effort to understand that. Because both Buddhism and traditional culture often require, as the Shurangama Sutra says, manifesting by karma, follow karmic capacity, so that you can understand things to a corresponding degree. You need to be mentally prepared for this in order to truly understand and learn the best aspects of Buddhism and traditional culture. And I believe that if Shakyamuni Buddha were alive today, he will definitely use modern scientific language to explain Buddhist scriptures. For example, to explain Alaya Vajnana consciousness, or to explain Tathagata Garbha. Anyone familiar with modern science would find it much easier to understand. I believe that mastering modern science and technology is actually a shortcut to spiritual cultivation. Because science and technology have already truly approached the core concepts of physics. When you reach this level, your faith will gradually grow, your resolve will steadily strengthen, and you may truly, genuinely be able to enter the path. You may learn some of the precious concepts of Buddhist philosophy.
All right, thank you very much, Principal. Truly.
Thank you, Khenpo.
Bandara